Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Thank you. Never sure if the audio is actually going out into the internet when we start these things up. Sorry about the delay in getting started here. This is the first time I've run a Zoom session that's been set up by somebody else, and I wasn't aware that they had stuck you into a waiting room that I had to admit you from. And it looks like I'm going to have to keep an eye on this because they keep slipping people into the waiting room. Okay. Welcome to the Department of Liberal Studies and welcome to Cal State Fullerton. I'm Craig McConnell, and I'm the Department Student Success Coordinator, somebody that you perhaps will be coming to in the course of your stay with us a few times, several times. Everybody in our department provides advising to our students, but I'm sort of the person who's been identified to take care of students who are struggling. So if anything comes up in your journey along the way, you can talk to any of us, but if you don't know which one of us to talk to, you should probably start with me or with the department chair. So I prepared for you. There we go. We're still admitting people from the waiting room. I prepared for you about, I don't know, 30 or 40 minutes of notes to give you a quick orientation to the department, who we are, what we think we're doing. And then after that, there'll be some time for questions and answers. I hope you're all looking at a welcome screen that says, "Welcome to the Department of Liberal Studies." Okay, I think we've got 50 in the room. We might still have people trickling in as we go along. Okay, so first of all, I hope you have something that you can write with, either off to the side or perhaps you keep a separate window open. But if you have questions as we're going along, jot them down so that they don't get forgotten before we get to the end. And then I have set aside a fair bit of time for us to talk about any questions you might have at the end of the session. So I've given a brief introduction of myself. I'll introduce myself more fully in a moment. But I want to start by kind of giving you a better sense, perhaps, of what liberal studies is. So a lot of people come to us because they've been advised that we're a really good department for future school teachers. Some people come to us because they've looked at our curriculum and they kind of understand what we're up to, and they're looking for a broad interdisciplinary education. But it's good to hear from us what we do instead of relying on what you may have read in a catalog or heard from others, right? So we're an interdisciplinary department. We're called Liberal Studies because we're trying to create an education that's a lot like the education you would get at a small liberal arts college. So if you've heard about small liberal arts colleges in the area, the Claremont colleges, Whittier, there's an approach to education that they call a liberal education, where you study a number of things with a small dedicated faculty who are committed to teaching you not just things, but teaching you how to think through things, how to understand things in broader context, perhaps, than strict disciplinary learning will arrive at. So we think of ourselves as having three foundations: our curriculum and our faculty are all um, organized around these three areas: the arts and the humanities, the natural sciences, social and political philosophy. So early in the major, you'll take courses that study the way these three things emerge together over time. And then later in the curriculum, you'll take courses that treat these things one at a time. And then at the end of your curriculum, there are capstone courses that try to broaden the conversation out again to connections between these foundational areas. So in the department, unlike say the history department, where everybody in the history department has a PhD in history, or the the philosophy department, where everybody in the philosophy department has a PhD in philosophy. In our department, we come from different areas of the academy. So I have a colleague who is an art historian and a colleague who's a musicologist. She studies the history of music over time. I myself am a historian of science, and I have colleagues who are historians of science, one colleague who's a historian of medicine, and then I also have colleagues who study the history of social philosophy and political philosophy, and one who's actually a political scientist. So, unlike departments that are sort of founded around the idea of a discipline, our department is founded around the idea of conversations between disciplines. In the curriculum, there are two emphases that students use to take a, a, a bachelor's degree in liberal studies. One of them is the elementary education emphasis. And in,
Elementary.
in fairness, about 90% of our students are working on elementary education emphasis degrees. It's an ideal way to get the preparation you need to go into a credential program and become an elementary school teacher. And we'll talk a little later about other options. A lot of our students go on to work in special education, and we've had quite a few students go on to work as middle school teachers, and a handful of students who go on to work as high school teachers. So it is possible to springboard from a liberal studies degree to a single subject credential and teach at the high school level. But most of our elementary ed students teach elementary education. Um, the other emphasis in the department, and this makes up about 10% of our students, do what we call the interdisciplinary thematic emphasis. And we'll talk about the details of this in a little bit, but it's an interdisciplinary theme that the student defines. So it can be customized for practically anything. Some people use this as a way to put together a pre-law degree, and we have had students go on to law school. We've had people pull together a variety of finance and marketing courses and go on to become entrepreneurs to start their own businesses. We've also had people go into the world of business with liberal studies degrees. We've had people go into cultural studies. We have sent people off to PhD programs in comparative religion and in neuroscience. So there are a number of academic courses that you can follow with a thematic plan. We've had people go into real estate, and they tell us that having a broad liberal education makes it easier for them to connect with their clients. They feel that the education, even though it might not seem like an obvious preparation for real estate, they come back and tell us that a lot of their colleagues envy them the degree they have. We've had people work on municipal management. There are courses on campus you can pull together from business and from human services that lead very nicely to careers in municipal management. There are also people who pull together their interdisciplinary thematic emphasis to take on more specialized credentials in the world of education. So people particularly interested in special education or foundational level math or foundational level science, these foundational level emphases lead to a credential that lets you teach middle school math or middle school science. We have one graduate who did a foundational level general science theme, uh, started teaching middle school earth science, and then eventually went back and got a master's degree in earth science, in geology actually, and now teaches at a community college a few semesters or a few courses every semester, in addition to keeping his job in the middle school. Just taking a moment to manage the roster here. It looks like everybody's been admitted. Okay. Um, so 3 foundations in the department. That's sort of a way to look at the curriculum and the faculty. 2 emphases, right? You'll end up having to declare an emphasis. If you know that you want the elementary education emphasis, you should declare that now. If you know you want the interdisciplinary thematic emphasis, you should declare that now. And if you're not sure, there's nothing wrong with leaving your emphasis undeclared for a semester or 2.
Where would we put it to like emphasize that or put that in the record?
I'm sorry?
Um, since you said that you had to choose what emphasis it was, where exactly would we like add the emphasis to our record?
Yeah. How do you declare an emphasis? You send an email to the department chair and you tell the department chair your name, your campus-wide ID, and the emphasis you want to declare.
Thank you.
Okay? Okay. So a lot of the information that we're going to go over today is available at the department website. This website, I think, is worth knowing about, worth having that URL. I'm going to show you actually the way that I get there. So let me stop the screen share and do a different share. So when I'm at Google, if you put in CSUF LBST, the first result you'll get will be the Department of Liberal Studies website. So either know the URL or think CSUF LBST. Are you all looking now at a website that says Department of Liberal Studies at the top?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So what you'll find here, I'm just going to want to navigate this a little bit with you, is on the right column, news, right? Preparing for the special ed credential, preparing for the foundational level math credential. There are a number, right, of things that come up, and they'll usually show up here. Liberal studies scholarships are usually available every semester, so that you can start applying for those as soon as in the spring. And the Jane Hippolito Memorial Scholarship has just been started. This is a scholarship given to a student who submits the best paper to the scholarship committee. So other news will show up here from time to time. And it's worth kind of checking in from time to time to see what's going on. You can see, I think from this photograph, right, we're a small department. This is us at a recent commencement ceremony, um, and that is all of us. In fact, the gentleman here with the particularly prominent white chevron on his chest is our former chair who is now retired. So we're a little bit smaller than that photograph actually suggests. So you can learn more about the faculty, right, by clicking that faculty tab. You'll find out who the full-time liberal studies faculty are. And this is kind of useful to get a little bit of a sense of who your faculty are, and also useful, any of these faculty can provide advising for you. So if you're taking a class from one of these faculty members, in addition to being your professor, they could be your advisor for that semester. So you also learn a little bit about our specializations in here. Emily Bonney is a historian of art. She works particularly on ancient Greek art. Um, and right now she's serving as the dean of the library. So she's not been teaching for us very much. Um, Dr. April Bullock, who is almost camouflaged in this photograph, loves to spend a lot of time in the desert, historian of food and culture and 19th century British and American culture. She's also our incoming chair. So starting in January, Dr. Bullock is the person you'll write to when you're writing to the chair of the department. Um, Dr. Mark Fisher, our current chair, is a political theorist, works on international relations. He's a Machiavelli scholar, if you're familiar with the Italian Machiavelli. Margaret Garber works on early modern history of science, so does a lot of work on 15th and 16th century alchemy, ancient and early modern history as well. And then Dr. Joe Gonzalez, interdisciplinary views of love, self, and the body from antiquity to the present. He's actually a historian of Sweden, who has sort of branched out into these other interests in his teaching. Dr. Kevin Lambert, a historian and philosopher of science, works a lot on 19th and early 20th century mathematicians. There's me looking a little brighter than I do at 10 o'clock in the morning. I work on the history of modern physics and cosmology, and I work a lot now on literature and science. So literary figures writing about science, scientists producing literature. Dr. Andrea Patterson, who works in the history of medicine, particularly interested in theories of race, social constructions of race, and Dr. Angeles Sancho Velasquez, our musicologist, who's also very interested in art history, aesthetics, the philosophy of art, and finally, Dr. Saul Tobias, who works on social and political thought, modern continental philosophy. He's also been working a lot lately on the history and philosophy of Buddhism. So that's the faculty. Our students come from a variety of different walks of life. And I want you to know about this tab in particular because there's contact information here if you've followed the link for the Liberal Studies Student Association. This is a group that that has been reasonably active even during the lockdown, and they would love to know that you're joining the major. So when you can, send an email off to this Gmail address or go to their Facebook page if you're on Facebook and connect with the current students. There are alumni profiles on this page, information about advising, right? Where to send an email and start the process of getting an advising appointment, and probably most importantly, contact information. So if you ever need to get in touch with the department chair and his phone and email address is here. And in January, this will be Dr. April Bullock, and her phone and her email address will be here. Jennifer Shorts is our department coordinator, the department secretary in older parlance. And Annika Pinpin is our department administrative assistant. Most things that you need from secretarial staff, you'll go straight to Jennifer for. Probably the most important part of the webpage that I want to share with you is the tab on academics. The academics page gives you a sense of the interdisciplinary nature of our department and of our programming, and gives you specific guidance for how to navigate the elementary education emphasis or the interdisciplinary thematic emphasis. And so I want to give you a quick walkthrough on each of those right now. So I'm going to click first on the elementary education emphasis. There's some material here for you to read at your leisure, but I want to draw your attention to this link here that says click here to download the requirements for the liberal studies major. So I'm going to click here. It should be opening a PDF document on your screen. It should look all gray right now. And do you now see gray background with a white sheet, liberal studies major requirements?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
When you get off of Zoom with us, or while you're on Zoom with us, you're going to want to download this 2-page document and perhaps even print it out. This is the advising document that your advisor uses to keep track of your progress through the major. And it's also the best document to use to figure out what class do I take next. It lists at the top the liberal studies core courses. These are 30 units or 10 classes that you take from liberal studies professors with a liberal studies prefix. So the first course in the department for you is Liberal Studies 300, an introduction to liberal studies. There are notes on the far right telling you that just warnings about prerequisites, about community college equivalents and things like that you want to pay attention to. But in the normal course of events in your first semester in the department, and it says right here, right, first semester, you want to take,
Oh,
hello?
I'm sorry. Sorry for this. I have a question. So I tried to take LBSD 300 and LBSD 302A this morning.
That's correct.
Yeah, but they don't allow me to add the LBSD 302 together with LBSD 300 in one semester. So I don't know what happened.
Okay, I'm just going to take a note of that. This happens sometimes that, has anybody else tried to register and run into the same problem?
Yes, this is Olympia. Yes, that happened to me yesterday.
Okay,
Like the thing is, it's require me. It say that it's an error in my registration for LBSD 302A class. They say that I had to complete the general A classes and have to pass the LBSD 300. But I already met all the requirements for the general A. So I don't know why.
okay. So yeah, let me explain what's happening. This happens from time to time, and this may be happening with all of you, it sounds like. There's a process that we need to go through to clear you for enrolling in 302A. It usually happens before you get your registration window opens, but it sounds like they've gotten backed up in the chair's office. So I'll be writing an email to the chair once we get off of this Zoom session, letting him know that that you're not able to enroll. And believe it or not, I need each of you to send him an email saying, I'm a new transfer student. I tried to enroll in 302A, and it tells me I haven't completed the prerequisite for 300. And in the course of the now we've got a fall break coming up here on this campus, but I would hope by 10 days from now, like not next Wednesday, but the Wednesday after, those things should start being cleared. What I can promise you is the only people taking 302A this spring are transfer students. And so those classes are sitting there waiting for you to enroll in them, and you should not worry about losing a seat because the seats are all empty right now. The other thing I need to tell you is when you get familiar with this sheet, you'll understand 302A is a prerequisite for 302B, and 302B is a prerequisite for 303, 304, and 305. So if you miss 302A in the spring, it's going to hold off your graduation probably by a semester, because you need to finish 302A to take 302B. You need to finish 302B to get into 303, 304, and 305. And you need to finish those 3 courses to take 401 and your senior seminar. So I know this has got to be frustrating for you. I would be frustrated if I were in your position, because you can't register for 302A now because the prereq hasn't been cleared. And I'm telling you, you have to get 302A this spring. So I'm going to just ask you for your patience and promise you I'm going to get that email out. I'm going to send your information to the chair in the hopes that he can batch process them if he hasn't already. And then I also need you to send an email to the chair saying, I can't enroll in 302A. I'm a new transfer student. It says I don't have the prerequisite of 300.
Professor, can you please provide us the email?
I'm sorry?
You say that we should send an email to him individually, right?
That's
can
right.
you put the email?
You want to know what his email is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you put that in the chat box?
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so let me get back. Before we move on, I want to know, is there anybody who has tried to register for 302A and has successfully registered for it? I'm hearing crickets now. It sounds like, yeah, probably not.
I have a question.
Uh-huh.
So even though it didn't allow me to register for 302A, it allowed me to still register for 315. Will that get kicked off of my registration later, or?
Not at all.
Okay.
Not at all.
Okay, just want to
So,
confirm.
so for most of our students, they take an interdisciplinary course the same semester they take 302B, right? We ultimately want you to have 300 and 302A in the spring. If you take 315 as well, that's 3 liberal studies courses. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And you're going to need that interdisciplinary studies course eventually. Most of our students take their interdisciplinary course in their second semester with us, but a lot of people take it their first semester. And so I think what you'll find is that if you're enrolled in one course, what's happening with another course in our department doesn't ever really affect that. There are some courses on the campus where enrollment in one course is required for enrollment in another. And so co-requisites like that, sometimes if you don't catch one, you get thrown out of another, but that doesn't happen with departmental courses. So if you're in Liberal Studies 315 and you're hoping for the European tour, it's a good course, and I would encourage you to hang on to it.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
But the only caution on that is not if it's at the expense of getting into 302A. So if you have to drop 315 to get into 302A, you're going to need to do that.
Will do.
Okay?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So let's continue looking at the way the degree is put together. I'll get Dr. Fisher's email into the chat when we get out of this screen share situation. The course 300 is an introduction to liberal studies. There are community college equivalents to this course. So if you took a course that they told you would count for liberal studies 300A, or if you think you might have taken a course, you want to, at the end of this session or during the private check-ins in the afternoon, ask to see if you have an equivalent that means you don't have to take 300A or 300. But all students have to take 302A from us. It is a survey of the development of arts and humanities, the natural sciences, and social thought from antiquity roughly to the Renaissance. So from the time of the ancient Greeks up until about 1500 or so. And then you'll take Liberal Studies 301, which is called Inquiry and Composition in Liberal Studies. This is an upper division writing course. Every student at Cal State Fullerton has to take an upper division writing course, and a lot of students take an English course, English 307, to fulfill this requirement, but some departments write their own upper division writing courses. We've done that so that instead of writing about some English professor's favorite poet, you're actually writing about the kinds of people we read and write about in liberal studies while you're taking your upper division writing course. So these are actually staffed by our faculty. Then in 302B, right, historical development of liberal studies, this is the continuation of 302A. It picks up in the early Renaissance, about 1500, and moves up to about 1900, right, into the early modern period or the modern period. And then during the semester that you take 302B, or earlier if you can, later if you need to, you're going to want to pick up one of these interdisciplinary studies courses. These courses all double count for upper division GE. So if you take the California experience, it will also take care of a D4 for you and your area Z course, the cultural diversity course. If you take, that's 310. If you take 315, it counts as a D4 and as a Z. So the same breakout, the same for cross-cultural social thought. If you take cross-cultural humanities, it counts as a C3 or a C4 and as a Z. Cross-cultural history of medicine is being offered, but it's not yet part of the GE program. So you're going to want to pay attention to that. You can use these liberal studies courses for your upper division GE. And I'll talk a little more about upper division GE down the road. I want to point out that some of these courses, history of early science and technology, gets offered about every fourth semester. The history of science course gets offered every semester. Evolution and creation is an infrequent offering. Science on the silver screen is it's offered about every third or fourth semester. This is a look at science in cinema, films starting with Frankenstein and Metropolis, and coming up to things that are playing in theaters today. I teach that course. It's being offered this spring. And if you're particularly interested in a course about science and scientists in cinema, you want to catch that this spring because it may not get offered again until your last semester with us. Science, technology, and society offered about every other semester. Food and the social sciences offered about every other semester, and ancient eats offered about every other semester. So if you're particularly interested in one of these courses, you might take it the next time that it's offered, and you might hold off on taking your interdisciplinary studies course until a course that you're interested in comes up. These are not offered every semester, right? They have different sort of frequencies they come up with. In your third semester with us, right? So in 302A and 302B, the humanities, the sciences, the social thought are all in the same classroom with the same professor. When we get to contemporary issues, we break them out. And so you will have a semester with us where 9 units of your registration will be liberal studies courses. And you'll spend part of your time talking about humanities and arts with a humanities professor in 303, talking about science with one of the historians of science in 304, and talking about social thought with one of the social thought professors in 305. We coordinate those courses. We've sat in on each other's courses. We know what's going on in the other courses. But the courses themselves, when I teach liberal studies 304, it's an entire semester about what happened in the sciences from roughly 1900 until very recently. In your last semester with us, you take a capstone course, Knowledge in the Arts and Sciences, and one of these senior seminars. And like the interdisciplinary courses, these senior seminars are not offered every semester. So if you see in this list one that you're particularly interested in, you might end up taking it a little early if it comes up in the rotation. So my literature and science course, for example, comes up about every third semester. We all kind of rotate into these. There's Kevin Lambert offers a course on the history of the information machine. It's a history of computers. And that course comes up about every fourth or fifth semester. Humanities and Arts and the Great Book Seminar differ a lot depending on who's teaching them. So a great book seminar, for some people, the great books amount to reading classic political philosophers. So they read a lot of Plato, a lot of Aristotle, a lot of Machiavelli. When I teach the great books seminar, I teach it as tragedy in the Western tradition. So we start with the ancient Greek tragedies, move up through medieval and Renaissance tragedies, and end with modern tragedies. So you'll learn more about the seminars probably from talking to your classmates, your upperclassmen, the people who are a semester or two ahead of you in the program, than you will from me. But it's worth kind of keeping your eye out on what the seminar offerings are. Again, particularly if there's one in particular you're hoping to take. So that's the core, 30 units, right? These 10 classes, starting with 300 and ending with a seminar somewhere between 485 and 492. And they're structured so that you can take them in 4 semesters. In a very real way, this core has been designed for transfer students. The students who are freshmen on campus who declare liberal studies, they have a couple of lower division GE classes they take with us. They start getting together with the student association earlier, but in a very real way, we don't see them in the classroom very much until they're juniors. And so I do want you to know that even though you're new to campus, even if you compare yourself to somebody who started with us as a freshman, you're no newer to us than the people who started at Cal State Fullerton a few years ago, right? The faculty in liberal studies, we expect to meet our students in the 302A, usually for the first time. So that's the core. Both elementary ed emphasis students and interdisciplinary thematic plan students take this same 30-unit core. Now, if you're heading for a career in elementary education, there's another 21 units in the major, and we've arranged those to make them good preparation for people heading for careers in elementary education. So we'll ask you to take another visual and performing arts course at the 300 level or at the 400 level. Some of these, right, art and child development, music and childhood, particularly useful for people who are going to be in the classroom. You can also swap in a 3-unit upper division course from art, music, theater, dance, if there's something in particular that you're interested in. Then we ask you to take one course in children's literature, either from the English department or from the theater department. This is a course that if you've already taken a children's literature course, I'm going to ask you to hold off on until we're sure that you need it, because we do accept community college equivalents for the children's literature course. You also can take in this area an introduction to literature, British literature, American literature, and all of these courses have community college equivalents that we'll accept in their place. So as you're looking for your schedule for the spring, you know you need 300 and 302A. If you took something at the community college that counts for 300, take 301 right away. The earlier you take your upper division writing course, the sooner you use what you learn there to do well in your other courses. If you take 300 and 302A, that's a lot of liberal studies for your first semester. Take 301 and 302B in the fall. And then
Can I ask a question.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you know about this or not, but a lot of people were sent, well, I'm sure probably everyone was sent the incentive to enroll at the Irvine campus. Are you familiar with that?
I am familiar with that.
Okay, so I was wondering how that works. Like, do we have to pay for that separate, or is that covered in
Mm.
our Fullerton tuition already?
No, it's, it's a satellite campus, but they, anything you do at Irvine, you pay for at the same time and in the same way that you do your Fullerton classes. You register for them the same way. It's just a different section number. So it's not a different university. It's just a different campus of Cal State Fullerton.
So how do we pay for those classes?
The same way you pay for your courses that you take at the Fullerton campus.
Okay.
When you put those courses into your cart and enroll in them, they get added into your tuition bill and you pay for them all at once. So
Okay.
it's not a separate process.
Okay. And then that means that because it's technically part of Fullerton, that means that we will never have to transfer the units from the Irvine campus to Fullerton, correct?
That's exactly right. So
Okay.
it'll be part of your Cal State Fullerton registration. It'll automatically be part of your Cal State Fullerton transcript.
Okay.
And the exact same rules apply for dropping courses, for converting courses to credit, no credit, uh, everything about them. It's really like the only thing different is they happen to meet 30 miles south of here.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, so you've got the liberal studies core, and then you've got these 21 units of elementary education courses you need to take in addition to the core while you're taking the core. So if you want to finish the degree in 4 semesters, these 30 units and these 21 units need to be done in 4 semesters. So you take a handful of liberal studies courses and then you fill your schedule with these elementary education courses. I think we'd worked through the arts and humanities courses. There's a section for mathematics and natural science. The Math 303B has a prerequisite of Math 303A that you may have completed at the community college. And in fact, I think there's one community college equivalent for Math 303B if you went to Coastline College and took Math C 106. You can actually be waived out of 303B as well. A course in the natural sciences, so either Planet Earth for Educators or Life Science Concepts. So they're both 400 level classes, but they're both designed for future teachers. And then another course in the social sciences, another course in cultural diversity, and then one elective course, which could be Math 303A if you've never taken a course on Math for Educators, or you can fill that with any other course really that would have fit into any of these categories above. And then for future teachers, I want to point out that when you finish everything down to this line, you have a bachelor's degree in liberal studies, right? That didn't work well. But if you're going to go to the credential program at Cal State Fullerton, they also require 12 more units be taken as part of your undergraduate degree. So you have electives and you need to use 4 of your elective slots to take these courses. EDL 315, a course on elementary education, EDL 325, this elementary ed is EDEL, a course on cultural diversity in the classroom, and then a course on human development, which could be CAS 101 or 312 or CAS 315. Some of these are early childhood development. Some of them are adolescent development. So if you're thinking about middle school or the higher grades, you might veer towards 315. Or you can take 325 A and B or Psych 361. Psych 361 is a really good course. It's also a GE area E course. It's on child psychology. And then you need a course on ethnic studies, particularly one from this list for the Cal State Fullerton credential program. So that's an advising sheet. I know it's an awful lot to look at once, especially for the first time. The good news is you don't really have to memorize any of this. You need to know how to read the sheet. There are spaces in here. These dotted boxes are spaces for you to write down maybe the semester you plan to take the courses, and to keep track of the grades that you're making as you go along the way. It's helpful if you have a sheet like this in front of you that you've kept current when you call somebody for advising, especially after you've been with us a while. So that's the elementary ed emphasis. I do want to go back and look at, so again, going to academics, at what the thematic plan looks like. So we click here for the interdisciplinary thematic emphasis. There are samples for people going into special education, foundational level math, foundational level general science, and a list here of the thematic plans that a lot of previous students have put together. But I want to look at the view sheet, right? So at the very bottom, to download the requirements, click here. You get a page that looks very familiar, right? The liberal studies major requirements. The interdisciplinary thematic emphasis has the same core. So you take the same 300, 302A, 301, 302B, all of these courses are the same down until you get to this line for the interdisciplinary thematic emphasis. Here, you identify a theme, something that you're particularly interested in working on, and then you choose 6 upper division courses. So they have to be 300 level or higher from outside departments and have them arranged around some theme. The most recent theme that I have helped somebody set up is a student who's going to be a mortician. And so her theme is on death and dying. There are courses in human services, in anthropology, in sociology, and psychology. She's going to take every course on campus that relates to the end of life and to death and to its impact on the family, on how the society and the culture think about it, how it affects people personally. And at the end, you do an interdisciplinary research project. You'll take a special course, Liberal Studies 482, right? So there are 7 classes to take on the elementary emphasis. On the thematic emphasis, it's 6 plus this special seminar. And in that special seminar, you'll have a professor walking you through writing essentially kind of a big term paper about your theme. So on the advising sheet, here's the 7th course, right? That makes it 21 units. You can also do that with a project supervisor who could be somebody even outside of the department. So if, we have had the occasion where somebody's working on a project in culture and gender, and they get a women's studies professor to supervise their project. So instead of taking 482, they take women's studies 499 for 1 unit in one semester and 2 units in the next semester, and their project is supervised from outside of the department. So 2 very different ways to complete the major. In both instances, a 30-unit liberal studies core, and in both instances, 21 more units that round out the degree. But you'll need to decide whether it makes the most sense to you to take the elementary ed emphasis and have these 7 courses sort of restricted for you, or to put together a thematic emphasis of your own and have a little more agency in choosing what these courses are. And again, for people heading into special education, taking a couple of special education courses and a couple of child development courses and the child psychology course make a nice thematic plan that makes for a good preparation to go into a special education credential program. So I want to stop that share and go back to the PowerPoint we were looking at together. a lot of the advising that you're going to need from us over the course of the next couple of years is going to start and stop at the website, right? Those view sheets, by the way, get updated when new courses get approved, and they also get they get sort of preserved so that when there are new changes to the curriculum, you will be able to use the view sheet that was current when you first joined the department. So as things change over time, if they throw new requirements on, if they change requirements, we'll honor the requirements that were in place when you started. And that's true also of the GE program. There are occasionally changes to the GE program. One of the things that will be important for you folks to keep track of is that there's a new ethnic studies requirement that's going to be added to the GE program starting in fall. And so you folks are the last students who are going to be enrolling under catalog year 2016, I think it is. You're essentially going to be catalog year 2020 is what they'll call you, but they kind of freeze the catalog in place in terms of the rules. And then until you graduate, they hold you to the requirements that were in place in 2020. People who start with us in the fall will have a different catalog. And so when you hear general things about advising in the classroom, you sometimes want to take them with a bit of a grain of salt, because sometimes you'll hear people giving information that doesn't match your catalog year. And so the best source of good advice, and we'll talk about where to get your best advising, but the best advising comes not word of mouth, not from your classmates, but from advisors who have been sort of designated to know the best advice to give you. So just to kind of summarize, because I know it's kind of a bewildering amount of information, the overview of liberal studies graduation requirements: there are core courses and emphasis courses that you take for the major. You also need to finish your general education program. If you come in with a certified associate's degree, it locks in all of your lower division GE, and your GE will be done when you take 9 more units of GE. Those are upper division courses that need to be taken on this campus. And as I pointed out, a number of liberal studies courses actually carry GE credit with them, and you can use those to finish off your GE. So if you had somebody earlier today tell you, fill your schedule with GE courses because you need to finish that up, I really want to kind of caution you to make sure it's a course that you need for the emphasis that you choose. So if you signed up for just a random GE course because it looked interesting and they told you need it, you might want to look to see if it fits into the major. And if it doesn't, you might want to drop that and add a GE course that does fit into the major. So major requirements, GE requirements. You also have a certain number of electives. You need 120 units for the degree. It's a 54 or a 51 unit major and a 48 unit GE package. So that gets you up to what, 109 units. I don't think that's right. 100 and, well, I can't add today. 48 and 51. It's a 99 unit package. The major and the GE will get you to 99 units. So if every course that you've ever taken up to now counts for your major or for GE, you'll need an additional 21 units to graduate. They won't let you graduate if you have 119 units and you finished your major and all of your GE. You'll have to take that last unit to take you over the 120 unit threshold. So with 21 units to spare, you could concentrate all of those courses into a minor, or you could take 7 classes that you're really interested in that have nothing to do with each other. And we can talk to you about things that are available on campus that other people have found interesting during advising. This is also the place that I want to remind you, if you don't already know, they talk to you about your TDA, your Titan degree audit. Or did they not talk to you about your TDA?
did.
They did. Okay. The TDA is the best way to keep track of your progress through the degree. As you take more and more courses, they'll fill into the places that you have requirements. They'll keep the tally of how many units you've completed at the bottom of the page. And so once you become familiar with your TDA, it will always tell you what you have left to do. Your TDA will be a little easier to read after you declare an emphasis, because until you declare an emphasis, your emphasis courses just show up as electives that you've taken. Whereas once you have your emphasis declared, they'll fill in as requirements for the major. And when you come to advising appointments, you should expect your faculty member to pull up your TDA. It's helpful if you have a TDA with you, particularly when we get back onto campus. It's particularly useful if you're having an office appointment to bring the TDA in with you. As long as everything's online, we're usually finding it easier to pull your TDA electronically, but it'll be helpful for you if you've pulled one so that you can follow along. So to get things back down to the basics, classes to take in spring, your first priority is Liberal Studies 302A. And if you've joined us late, I do understand that not everybody is getting into 302A right now. It's because there's a prerequisite glitch in the registration computer, and the department chair needs to override that glitch. Your second priority is to get Liberal Studies 300 or Liberal Studies 301. The way you make that call is if you've had a course that you think counts for Liberal Studies 300, then move on to Liberal Studies 301. If you haven't had a course that counts for Liberal Studies 300, take it in the spring. Your third priority, and this is how you'll do it every time, right? You use the advising sheet. First priority will change as you finish these things off, but your first priority will always be getting your liberal studies courses. Your next priority will always be courses that support your emphasis. And then your last priority is courses that support your admission to a credential program. If you're a future educator, those are the courses at the very bottom of the view sheet, or courses that help you make it to 120 units if you're a thematic plan student. Okay. Classes to avoid in spring 2021. This may be as important as what courses to take. So we will waive certain courses if they were taken at the community college level. I kind of pointed that out quickly as we were looking at the view sheet. If you feel like you've taken a course that looks a lot like a course on the advising sheet, don't register for that course until you've talked with an advisor and they've confirmed that you need the course. So courses to be especially careful about: British literature, American literature, children's literature. Almost all of the times, if you've taken a lower division course in one of those areas, we will accept it in the department. The linguistics course, which on our campus is English 206, which is kind of a basic overview of the English language. Also, there are community college equivalents that we will accept there. And the Math for Educators course, right? If you had any kind of course that's Math for Educators, hold off on Math 303A until we figure out whether you really need to take it or not. And then at the bottom, right, we do take community college equivalents for 300. So move on to 301 if you have any doubt about that. With those 21 units of electives that you have, for a lot of people, it's helpful to take a minor that complements the liberal studies degree. There is a natural science minor that's distributed across geology, chemistry, biology. It's a great minor if you want to teach middle school science at any level. There are child and adolescent studies minors. I think they have 2 of them now that are worth looking at. They have one on children and one that focuses on adolescents. It's also because, you know, we've talked enough about the major now. The great thing about our major is that it is interdisciplinary and we cover so very many different things. But probably, you know, the one drawback to our major is that it's almost all focused on the European experience. In the 303, 304, 305 classes, we'll start to see more activity from the Americas. But even, you know, when you look at Europe and America, that is still a very Western focused curriculum. So a nice complement to our major is an ethnic studies course that will, or an ethnic studies minor that will give you 9 or actually probably 12 or 15 units on the African American experience or on the Asian American experience. I've got Asian there twice on that slide, so that's an error. You just need to look at the list of possible minors, find one that's interesting to you. There's a Chicano studies minor. There's I think still a Latin studies minor. So they're worth looking at, I think, to round out your degree. You might also look at a TESOL minor. This is teaching English as a second language, which could be particularly helpful if you're trying to teach English overseas. A lot of students benefit from taking a minor in a language. So especially if you have some Spanish or some French or some Vietnamese and want to round that out, or it's not too late to start taking these courses. Depending on, you know, if you're a future educator, having some Spanish, having some Vietnamese could be particularly useful in some school districts. There are certainly other modern languages that have minors available. And then finally, I want to point to the minors that are offered in the department. There is a liberal studies minor, which you obviously cannot take, right? You can't major and minor in the same subject. But the department hosts, in addition, a food studies minor and a minor in science, culture, and society. We have so many faculty and so many courses on things like history of science, science, technology, and society, science and film, that you can put together a 12-unit minor out of those courses.
Professor,
Yes?
I have question. So I have one class that require for my in the natural science class, natural science. So in the requirement from the PDF that you just show us, so one of the class in natural science that require is geology 410 and biology 455. So when I look at my ADT, those class doesn't show on my ADT. So like
Why
yeah.
don't I ask you to wait until I ask for questions, and then I'll ask you to share your registration screen so I can look at it and understand what you're asking about.
Okay.
Okay,
Sorry.
thank you. So this is just a suggestive list. There are certainly other minors. I really think if you can have a minor added to the liberal studies degree, it'll add a little bit of distinction to the transcript. And it'll also give you a focus in something that's less broadly interdisciplinary than what we do. So any disciplinary minor, I think, also makes good sense in combination with a liberal studies degree. The dean's office wants to be sure that we remind you of involvement opportunities on campus. There are something like 20 plus clubs in the Humanities and Social Sciences College. As a student at Cal State Fullerton, you're eligible to join any of these. So if you're particularly interested in psychology, you can be a liberal studies student and join the psychology club. There's no reason not to. There are peer mentoring opportunities. You can volunteer with the dean's office to be a peer mentor, or you can seek out peer mentoring through the dean's office. As you've been here a little while, you might look for opportunities to help faculty members with their research or to do research of your own. And there are undergraduate conferences available for students to present their research. There's some travel available for students who attend conferences. And more than anything, I want to encourage you to join the Liberal Studies Student Association, right? You'll find their information again on the department webpage. Okay, I know this is a lot. We're getting, I think, close to the end of the information overload, and then we'll deal with specific questions. So this slide, I think, is important for people who have come from community colleges to look at and think about. It says there are 3 main locations for HSS academic advising. So there's the Academic Advisement Center, which can give you advice about your GE requirements, can look at your overall degree requirements, and they can talk to you about other majors and other minors. Generally speaking, if you come to a liberal studies advisor and ask them about a minor in psychology, we can't really provide that kind of advising. We know our own department and our own majors and our own minors. The Academic Advisement Center has a general advising capacity for those kinds of things. When you have a major, as you do now, major advising you get from the department. And just as I tell you, don't trust a liberal studies professor who tries to tell you about a psychology minor, I would encourage you to always double check anything somebody from the Academic Advising Center or any place else tells you about the liberal studies major with a liberal studies advisor. There are times when their general approach to advising doesn't suit our students particularly well. And the time that I'm most concerned about with you folks right now is that they will often tell you to fill up your schedule with GE classes, upper division GE classes. And as I've shown you, you really want to be thinking about which GE classes might double count with the major before you take an upper division GE course. There's also a student success center in the dean's office. These campus locations don't mean anything to us now while we're online, but you can find all of these places online as well. The Student Success Center is something I hope a lot of you don't get a lot of contact with. It is where academic probation gets supported. Holds for academic probation are released there. But it's also important to know they do other things as well. That's where you'll go for graduation planning, which I know has to seem like a long way from now, but it's only probably 2 years out. It's crazy, but you've just started, and in about 2 semesters, we're going to start asking you to start thinking about how you're going to finish. Most importantly, they do study abroad advising here.